Well, as promised, quite a few days late, I'm back with a build video. Hello, it's Icy. Yes, this has been delayed. I recorded it several times, tried to, been sick. We're just going again. Let's do this video. Okay, this is my Warden Nightblade Templar. So this is a build to be used after update 46 when subclassing arrives for the Elder Scrolls Online. This is based off my standard everyday build that I run in 90% of content in the ESO on the live servers. In the ESO? The Elder Scrolls Online, yes. So this build will go up and including 2 trials. It's probably not for... It's definitely for veteran trials, but it's not for that tippy top endgame trials. Mostly because it uses Oakensoul. So it is absolutely for dungeons. It's for most dungeons, including hard modes, though I've only got a limited range of hard modes. I think it will be fine. It's for all overland content. It's for dragons and incursions and all that kind of stuff as well. It is a 1-bar Oakensoul heavy attack build. So it is based off the stuff I'm using right now, the same way of playing it, just switching out 2 class lines and replacing it with 1 Templar and 1 Nightblade and the 2 skills from those lines, and it gave me an additional 10k DPS. So when I parse this build just with the standard Warden skills that I would use normally, it passes for about, on a 6 million trial dummy, 6 million non-trial dummy, it passes for about 40,000 k DPS, which is excellent. Switching out the 2 skills, and that plus the passives, bumps that to 50k DPS, which is incredible. It passes for about 80k DPS on a trial dummy. I will show you these things. So you can see on trial dummies, an Oakensoul build will always go like scale less, but it's a great build. It's a really good, robust, easy to play, not too hard to get build. So let me share it with you. So we're going to start with the skills and what we're using, and a little bit of why we're using each of the skills. So Eternal Guardian, so the bear, and we're using magic morphs of all of these things. You could do, I mean, I haven't tried this with the stamina morphs, but you'd get a different result, maybe better? Try it and see. Let me know. I've only got so much time to do parse testing. So we're going with the grizzly, the magicka morph of the bear. We're going with the magicka morph of shulks, so deep fissure. And we are going with the fetcher fly infection. So the fetcher fly infection gives minor vulnerability, which is increases their enemy's damage taken by 5%. So very, very helpful, very important. We are definitely trying to cast this so that we are getting the every second cast gives the extra 60% damage. So we'll recast it faster if it's not on that one. So I'll show you that in a parse. So they're the main skills. Then things that you can drop in and out. You could use the Blue Betty, a very helpful skill. You'll see here on the bar, I've basically got 1 skill unused, and that is specifically because I want to leave a flex slot. So that means you can switch things in and out as you need it. There's no direct heal on this build right now, so this is the slot where you might put in a heal, but we do have some self-heals going on. So Blue Betty is an option for that final bar. Gives you, restores magicka, irrelevant on this build, but it removes, every 5 seconds removes a negative effect. Pretty helpful, and if you don't have any negative effects, you get an additional 5% damage. Really great. That, however, also bumps with well, it bumps with the Savage Beast, generating more ultimate, but it also very much jumps with this advanced species. So each animal companion you have slotted, you get an additional 5% crit bonus, crit damage bonus. Crit damage, not crit chance, but crit damage is excellent. So we would jump from 15 crit damage to 20 crit damage, which is excellent. So it is something to consider using for that last slot. Okay, second thing, Adric Spear. So this is from the Templar line. So I am specifically using Radiant Ward. You could use any of these probably, but the Radiant Ward works best for this particular build. There is usually a shield / damage, like a damage shield at my number 2 slot anyway for my normal Warden build. So having something like this slotted in is excellent. This gives you magic damage to nearby enemies and applies minor main, reducing their damage done by 5%. So you're viewing minor vulnerability on them, so they take more, but also minor maim, so they do 5% less. So both of those things together are great. And then it reflects damage as well, so that's good, and it scales off your max health, which ties in nicely with some of the other things that are going on with this build. Now, any of the skills will do. That one's very good for me for this particular, because the main part of this is to use a Adric Spear skill to trigger the passives. So this one in particular increases your crit damage by 12%. So we've got 15 from the Warden, plus another 12 from the Piercing Spear, which is, I mean, we're getting up there now, which is pretty good. That one, Minor Berserk and Minor Protection, it doesn't matter. You're getting that already from the Oakensoul ring. But if you were trying to run this without Oakensoul, you would want that probably. This one's just generally helpful. It's just doing extra damage as you do damage, and then scales off your weapon or spell damage. So that's something to keep in mind about boosting your weapon and spell damage as opposed to maybe other sorts of options. And then Balanced Warrior, another just straight up useful passive. Weapon damage, spell damage, and armor by 6%. Also, that does not need a skill equipped in order to activate that. Neither of these two skills, these bottom ones, need for you to have something in the bar in order to get this, so very helpful. Then we're going Assassination skill line. So this is from the Nightblade, the damage skill line from the Nightblades, and we are going with I'm mostly running with Merciless Resolve, so that gives you increases weapon and spell damage by 30 up to 10 times. So remember, the other skill from the Templar line increased its damage depending on what your total weapon spell damage was. And then when 4 or more stacks, you can consume the stack to fire an arrow of magic damage and heal for 55% of the damage. There are 2 more. The other one does more weapon and spell damage. It does 40, I think. There's no heal, and it's a stamina skill. The stamina's fine. That's not really a problem for the cast. I'm using this one specifically because there's no real heal on this character at the moment. If you don't need that, or if you're just going for like a total top parse, you could switch out the other one. But I think for practicality, we're going with Merciless Resolve. So this has got a heal as well. Well, this has got a shield. So we have a shield and a heal that are part of the rotation. So then you've got options in here as well. There's a couple of different things. You could go Concealed Weapon, which gives you, you strike the enemy from the flank, you set them off balance, which is very helpful, especially in a group arrangement. And getting Minor Expedition has other benefits, which I'll talk about in a minute. So you could use that one, or you could even use it in the flex slot, depending on situation. You could use the Execute. It's quite hard to work in with a heavy attack build, the Execute, so I wouldn't really recommend that. But one thing I would say is if you're in a situation where you're not parsing, the mark target could be very useful as well. So when the thing dies, you get healed, and it puts a major breach on them as well. So that would be good in trial situations. In a parse, it's not very helpful because the boss isn't dying for several minutes, so we don't do it in the parse. But so this one's great. It gives lots of nice damage and a bit of a self-heal. Now, passives. So, crit chance rating against enemies you are flanking. That's important. So you need to be on basically the back half of the mob, increased by 8.8%. And you'll note as well that doesn't require a skill to be equipped. That's just a straight up damage increase through the crit. So we've got a restore stamina. Once again, if you're short of skill points, some of these passives do not need to be unlocked. This is one of them. So for heavy attack build, you never have a resource problem, so you don't need to unlock some of these skills. So pressure points increases your crit chance per assassination ability slotted. So one slot gives you 2.5% chance. 2 slots gives you 5% chance. So you could increase your crit chance again by slotting more assassination skills. But we're getting an additional 2.5% right now, so that's good. And then on top of the Master Assassin, so it's like 8.8 plus 2.5, so just over 10. And then we also have Hemorrhage, which increases the crit damage by an additional 10%. So the buffs we're already getting from the ring. Like things like minus savagery, you know, major brutality, all of those things come from the Oakensoul ring. So these are all helpful for different builds, but not the Oakensoul one. It's really just the straight up crit damage that we're looking for here. And that just needs one skill slotted. So that's 3 additional locations of crit damage, 1 additional location of crit chance, just from 1 skill each in the passives, which is really, really nice. Okay. So we still have a slot free here. So let's talk about some of the other things you might put in there. So Destruction Staff, certainly Crushing Shock is a strong candidate. Just your ranged interrupt. I mean, you could certainly go Unstable Wall of Elements, especially if you were going the Wall of Elements plus the dagger to really proc the damage for like off-balance people. That would be very good. You could also go any of the scribed skills in this final thing. Magical Burst, so magic damage and then magic damage over seconds, or a heal, or this is also morphs to a ranged interrupt. Any of those things could be great. You could do a single target heals or single target damage or a shield. Any of those things are fabulous. And just note, sometime in July, scribing is coming to the base game. You'll be able to claim it for free from the Crown Store. So scribing base game July-ish sometime, just FYI, which is really, really, really cool. So because scribing, wonderful. So you might also go something from the Mages Guild, though specifically probably something from the Mages Guild, an actual scribe skill. So Shocking Contingency, or this morphs great to a healing one. So it does a heal, then followed by a heal dot, or you could just have a damage dot followed by a heal dot. This is probably, if you need a heal, this is probably the one. So I would drop this one in above and beyond any of the other skills, for a heal anyway, remorphing that to a heal, so it's not there right now. And then the other big one is the banner. So this is a damage boost. So this is set for direct damage for this character, and there is a reason for that, as opposed to magicka damage. Magicka damage still works very well, but for a straight, like, ultimate amount of damage that you generate, direct damage works better. I've done the testing. So it's set to increase your weapon and spell damage for every 1% bonus to movement speed, up to a max of 450. This is why you might put the concealed dagger on the bar to increase the movement speed even further and boost his damage a bit more. The minor courage, that's on there from a previous test. You would want it to be basically protection. There is like exactly one like final script boost thing, I don't remember what they're called, that works, that isn't already overlapped with the Oakensoul boosts. I think it's minor resolve, something along those lines. So just look at which they are and then choose that one when you're morphing this up. So, yeah, so that will give you an additional 6% damage with damage done with direct damage abilities, which is just flat out great. Will also work for basically everybody in your group. Magicka damage is also a strong one as well. Depends on who else is in your group and what they're doing, but the direct damage is really great for this build. Okay, so that's the skills. Let's talk champion points quickly. Quickly, she says. Okay, so Wrathful Strikes, weapon and spell damage. This works even, this is the important, these are the skills I would use, even as the standard Warden without subclassing. With the subclassing, these become even more important. So this boosts against the Sun Shield, so the Wrathful Strikes with the weapon and spell damage. Weapons Expert, this is your heavy attack bonus, so 20% additional bonus. Fighting Finesse, this is your crit. Now, this one you would switch as required, depending on situation, between the 8% crit damage. I'm just leaving it on this for the parse, but you might instead go to Backstabber, which is 10% crit damage only, no healing, against enemies you're flanking. So that will give you, if you're in an organized group, you don't need any sort of crit heals at all, and you know that you can position behind the enemy, you might go with Backstabber instead of Fighting Finesse. And the last one is the Master at Arms. So it increases your direct damage done, with direct damage attacks by 3% per stage. So you'll note that matches the banner. I've done testing against all of these ones up here, and this works out best for this particular build. So there's been a lot of testing. So much testing. So many parses. Alrighty, so let's look at the red tree. So we have max health, because that's just helpful. We have fortified, max armor, because that's just helpful. And then we have I would like to call this a flex slot. One of them is a flex slot. So Spirit Mastery, always helpful in a group, but which allows faster res. The cost, you might go Shield Master, reduces the cost of your damage shield because you're running one. That's a different option. And then there's just, various sorts of things. Rejuvenation, if you're in a terrible situation. Most of the time, as a heavy attack build, you don't need this. You've got more than enough resources all of the time, which is why I like it. There's a bunch of other little ones in here you might consider. And then we have Celerity. So it's just a flat bonus speed, up to 10% movement speed, which plays nicely with the banner. So, which is why you might go Celerity. There's another one in here, which is a speed boost on kill. So that's another reason why you might drop that in as well. So, right, and then food. Okay, so you want probably Corrupting Bloody Mara. So max magicka and max health. Health recovery, sure. Optional. It's really about the max magicka and max health. It depends on your situation, where you are in a raid, where you are, do you need, like what you need specifically. But this one is excellent, gives you a lot of stuff. The other option would be your Bewitched Sugar Skulls, which also gives you the stamina. If you're needing to do a lot of dodge rolling, you might want to go that one instead. But you could just go for a blue health magicka food. You do want the health because it plays nicely with some of the other things that are going on in the other skills. And potions. We just use tripods. And the reason we just use tripods, or just any really basic health magicka something, is because we already get all of the buffs that would be granted on potions from the Oakensoul ring. So normally, like a weapon, spell power, spell prophecy, all of these things already come from the Oakensoul ring, so we don't need them. So we can just go normal pots. And we can really just use them as an, oh dear, things are going terribly bad, as opposed to using them constantly in a rotation. We can really just use them. So let's do a parse, shall we? After I've recharged my bear, we are of course using the Thief Shadowstone. the Thief Stone, sorry, for additional crit. Getting there. And I would like to thank Tower Dweller for the use of his house for this testing video. Thank you, Tower. Okay, so let's talk very briefly about how we do a parse, or at least how I do a parse. Is this the right way? Who knows? We'll see. So let's start out with the bear. And we're just going to light attack through each of the skills in order to get them all going. And then we're just going to hold down the mouse button and we're not going to let it go until the boar is dead. And we're just going to recast everything as it expires. And we'll see what we can do. Hello? There we go. Now, a couple of things here. Don't cast your shulks early. There's a burst at the end. And if you cast them too early, you miss out on the additional burst. You won't interrupt your heavy attack by casting a skill unless you cast it too early. So if you're waiting until sort of at the end from your animation where the heavy attack is just about finished, you're not going to interrupt the heavy attack at all. I haven't actually talked about gear yet, which is why, so we'll talk about that after so we know why that's important. So think of it as breaking this up into a more interesting video. She says, hoping. Yeah, so I cast one shield too early there and it interrupted the heavy attack. So if you wait towards the end, the game, whoop, that was too early, will automatically slot in the heavy attack inside the rotation without you having to get the timings exactly perfect, which is wonderful. So, $51k DPS without really trying particularly hard or concentrating that much, which is kind of great. That's really, really, really fabulous. Okay, so let's have a look at the gear. So what we're using, this is probably the easiest way to show everything together. What we're using is Lightning Staff of the Sargent with a weapon damage enchant. Lightning, the Sargent's set is the most, between that and the Oakensoul, that is the most important thing that you want for this build. You can't run this build without those two sets. You can do a range of other things, you can switch different things in and out, but you absolutely need Sargents and Oakensoul for this build. Is the foundation. And the reason you need Sargents is the 5-piece bonus. When you deal damage with a heavy attack, you gain a stack of Sargent's focus for 5 seconds, increasing the damage of your heavy attacks by 645 per stack. And it can occur every second and stacks up to 4 times. So if we come back and have a look at the fight stats, what you'll see is we've got the Sargent's focus here up basically 94% of the time, which is pretty good. That's about as high as it goes usually. So, which means we're getting our heavy attack bonuses are just being boosted ridiculously by that. So it is absolutely the most important thing here. So in order to make this work with the build, obviously the Oakensoul needs to be one of the jewelry slots, so the ring slot, and I'm running the weapon spell damage enchant and the Bloodthirsty trait. Then the other 2 pieces here are the other jewelry, so the ring of the Sargent, also Bloodthirsty, and the necklace, also Bloodthirsty. Then that leaves us one more slot we need to do, so that, which means we need a body piece in heavy. So we always go with head or legs because we get additional armor from running head or legs. So we've got the cuirass of the Sargent here. This is all divine traits as well, by the way. So then the second set I'm running is Noble Duelist. So Noble Duelist Sargent, sorry, is from Wayrest Sewers. 1 and 2, drop it. The lightning staff is important as well. You actually do need a lightning staff, not a fire or ice staff. The lightning staff with the splash damage is the thing that is helping with the amount of damage. So you'll drop the damage if you pick the other two. You might use them for specific reasons, but the damage goes down. So, Noble Duelist. This one comes from Blessed Crucible, another base game dungeon. Both of these dungeons you can solo. You can solo Wayrest 1, and the Blessed Crucible you can also solo if you need to. So you might need to, you can certainly do it with a group, which is faster, and it's much faster to get all the gear if you're doing it with a group as well. But both of these are farmable as far as it goes. So, Noble Duelist. So it's a light set, which is adding weapon and spell damage and stamina recovery, which is not overly useful for the build. But when you deal damage with a light or heavy attack in melee range, note the melee range, that is important for the build. You do need to be close up. Then you increase the damage of your light and heavy attacks against monsters. Monsters, not players. This is not a PvP set, this particular one. By 2,000 for 15 seconds. And it occurs once every 12 seconds. So it triggers, it lasts for 15 seconds, and hopefully you can re-trigger it again before it expires. So hopefully that stays up for most of the time. If we have a look back here again, we can see. There we go. So the Noble Duelist Silks, so that is triggered, his uptime is 99%. So that's great. So it's triggered and stayed up the whole time. So that's boosting the damage again. You could switch in another set here if you needed to. I parsed with a whole, like, 5 different sets that I thought might work quite well, ranging from things like Mother's Sorrow, like some pet things, all sorts of different bits and pieces. Once again, none of them worked better than Noble Duelist at melee range. So it might depend on the fight. If you can reliably stay in melee range, awesome. If you can't, then maybe another set is better. And I would probably lean in something that is in the crit side as opposed to the weapon damage side, just because you're already getting a lot of crit damage bonuses from all of the other skills, so triggering those more often would help. Right. So that's our gear. Oh, the last piece. One piece of Slimecraw. Slimecraw is the one that gives you the most crit chance for just a single item. So this is in medium. The Sargent is our one piece of heavy, and then the Noble Duelist is 5 light. And we're doing that in order to trigger the Undaunted passive that gives us extra health and magicka, so the 5/1/1 passive. You might consider going, if you went with a medium set, then you'd be using a light Slimecraw shoulder. The reason we go with the mask is because we get more armor from the head, chest, legs. We get more armor, so you want to go for the weightier pieces on head, chest, legs. Alrighty, so 51k, very, very tidy. So I'm gonna go and do a parse against Tower Dweller's trial dummy over here. We already have our ulti charged, and we already have our Merciless Resolve charged as well. Oh, one other thing with the Merciless Resolve, you can cast it or not. You will get a little bit more damage from casting it, and you're going to get that heal obviously, but you can just leave it there. And you'll lose about, I think about 2k damage on a trial dummy, something like that. So not a lot. So if your rotation's not working to cast this every 10 casts, it's fine. Because remember, it's boosting your weapon and spell damage is staying high if you're not casting it. When you cast it, it drops down. So if you can keep it in the sort of the 5 to 10 range, do that. Okay, so let's do this one. So before I just quietly pass for the rest of this, what you'll notice as well is I'm not using the synergies, and once again that's because Oakensoul means they're not useful. So we don't need these particular synergies. there we go. So 78k. That's without the additional banner, by the way. So so you would expect, or Betty Netch, so you'd expect another, you'd top 8k with those additionals. So pretty good. That as a rotation, that was fine. I mostly had everything up, so that's probably a fair number that you could expect to go there. Sargent's Focus popped up to 97%. Fetch a Fly, yeah, not too bad. It could have been slightly higher, but that's okay. You can see that weapon damage spell proccing, the weapon damage enchant proccing half the time, which is normal. We had 152% crit damage, triggering 56% of the time. So it'd be nice to get that up. But looking at the straight up damage, if we, and doing testing with different sets, if I sacrifice the additional damage from the noble silks, we lose out on, basically we lose out in different ways. So it's worth testing for yourself if that's something you're interested in. So finally, this video, I got it. We did it. We got it done. Let me know if you're going to use this build. Let me know if it's interested. Oakensoul, I didn't mention previously, is an antiquity, if you weren't aware. If you Google ESO Oakensoul, you will find instructions about how to farm that. So it's a multi-part antiquity. So you need antiquities, which come from the Greymoor chapter. Though I think you can unlock these as well in the Crown Store. Don't quote me on that, but it's there. And the actual antiquity comes from the High Isle chapter. Worth it. It might be unlocked with ESO Plus, I think, as well. So it could be something you might consider, either just paying for 1 month of ESO Plus if you don't already have it, or the next time a free trial happens, use your ESO Plus free trial in order to farm up Oakensoul. So, but let me know in the comments if this is useful to you. I'm not sure if you can hear the rain, which started while we were doing that. Do come follow me over at twitch.tv/ICYIC, where I stream the Elder Scrolls Online 4 days a week, and I'd love to have you over there. I have giveaways thanks to ZeniMax Online and Bethesda ANZ, and I will be using this build live in anger once it goes in about 5 weeks from now. Thank you for watching, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.